Hey, and welcome back to the Growing Pains podcast. I'm your host, Alyson Caffrey, and today I sit down with Jess Reynolds. Jess is a registered physiotherapist and board certified holistic health practitioner focused on holistic healing for women and children. As the founder of the Wellness Element, she specializes in using a root cause approach to help expecting mothers reverse and prevent severe nausea, vomiting, and fatigue during pregnancy, and just really help them thrive through the important time during pregnancy. In her addition to work with moms to be, Jess also runs Aura Apothecary, a natural skincare line offering clean, nourishing tallow-based products. I'm a huge fan of tallow-based products on your skin. She started the business as a new mom, looking for safe alternatives to a traditional beauty and skincare that would not cause harm to her or her baby's health. She's a mom and an entrepreneur. Jess skillfully balances the demand of growing two businesses while embracing the journey of motherhood. This is such an incredible conversation. I'm so excited for you guys to meet Jess. I ask her so many different questions about nausea prevention and overall holistic health in pregnancy and beyond, because as we all know, our bodies need lots and lots during this time. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I will see you inside. Jess, hey, welcome to Growing Pains. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing awesome. Honestly, I've joked several times on the podcast, like my little therapy hour, like talking with moms and hearing how they're doing all the things and keeping the balls up in the air. So thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat and just build a connection and exactly what you said, kind of just have that container.
Totally. So for the moms listening, let us know a little bit about Jess. Tell me a little bit about the business that you run and your family at home.
Yeah, I always find this question so interesting because when people put me on the spot and say like, what do you do? I'm like, everything? I don't know. So I do kind of have a few different hats I wear. My main priority or my main focus is that I work with women who are experiencing morning sickness and just really help them heal through that through a root cause approach. That is after many different health journeys of my own. On paper, I guess I'm a registered physiotherapist, which pieces together differently than you'd expect to now be the morning sickness holistic health coach. So yeah, there's a few different hats in that. And then I also own my own skincare line that I made when I was pregnant because I just didn't want to like worry about what I was putting on my body or around my baby. So yeah, there's a few things that make up like the professional version of me, I guess. And then obviously I'm mom to a super busy, wonderful 2-year-old that I am always learning from and growing alongside. And just, I guess my life is figuring out all those pieces as the puzzle.
Which I think a lot of moms listening can totally relate to and understand. My youngest is also 2. And I feel like recently he started being like more vocal about his own opinions and things that he wants to do. And so it's such a challenging season to be in.
Yeah, definitely. And just trying to hold space for it all, not get triggered, heal yourself while you're kind of like parenting them. It's like so multifaceted. But yeah, the greatest like teachers I think we can have are those little kids that just do push back on us and show us where our boundaries and our limitations are.
Yeah, 100%. I wonder, like, that's a lot, right? Like, let's just go ahead and say, like, you're supposed to be patient and firm, and you're supposed to be emotionally available and also guiding and structured and all those things, right? So, like, where is that sweet spot maybe that you found, at least in the early stages? Because I think it is always moving. I'm sure you're going to agree. But where is that sweet spot? Like, how can we do all the things we're supposed to do in like a day's time when it comes to parenting our kids?
Gosh, I don't even know. Honestly, truthfully, if we can, I think it's setting the bar too high to say that we can nail it all. Really, I think so. We just do the best we have with what we have. And at the end of the day, if we didn't work in alignment with where we want it to be, like just holding grace for ourselves, B, modeling what accountability looks like. So where I've really found the challenges is kind of like remaining the stable piece of like everyone's nervous system. And then where and when I can't, or where I reflect on like that could have been a little different, is just really like saying, and even though he does not get it at 2 years old right now, of like, I'm learning too. And I'm sorry if I didn't make you feel as
Mm,
safe or as maybe you wanted to, or as big. I think that's probably the most challenging part right now is like, much like I have a big personality, so does my little one. And so it's just like when we are overstimulated, when we are doing 10 things at once, like, and we feel like we can't contain that, just having grace for ourselves and them, and just kind of realizing that this is a group project and this is an ongoing thing, and that none of us are really, I don't think any of us really have it fully nailed, because even when we do, it changes next week.
totally. I fully agree with that, Jess. Like every time I feel like I get my footing or like some sort of solution works for diffusing a situation with the kids, then all of a sudden they just have these different needs or different perspectives. And I love what you shared too. I kind of want to highlight the fact that you're like, well, I don't know, right? And like sharing that you're doing this for the first time, because that was something I was kind of awoken to when I was a mom in the early kind of years. My oldest son's 4, so I'm still super new at this. And one of the guests on the show was like, "Oh yeah, just tell them like this is the first time mommy's had a 4-year-old. Like this is the first time. Like mommy doesn't know everything and I can't possibly know everything." The other day, my older son Frank said to Steve, my husband, he was like, "Well, mommy doesn't know that much, and daddy knows a lot of stuff." And I was just like, that is so funny because I'm the one who's always over here, like, I don't know everything, and this is my first time. And so he, I think, is like internalizing that as mommy doesn't know that much.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's such a kid thing to like, you think you're like, yeah, I'm figuring it out. And then they like spin it a little bit in their cute little way that they do. Yeah, that's funny.
So, how'd you get into morning sickness work? I'm super interested in this because I know so many women listening are either pregnant, trying to become pregnant and growing their families and doing all that stuff. And I remember I had 2 horrible bouts of morning sickness with our kids. And they call it morning sickness, but it's like all day sickness.
Mhm.
And you never really know when it's going to come. And some mornings you wake up feeling great, and other mornings you wake up feeling crappy. And I think, particularly for business owners, this is a huge challenge because we're running our company, we're managing our team, we're managing expectations with clients, we're doing things like this, like jumping into podcasts, and we got to be our best, right? We want to put our best foot out there and we want to show up and we want to do it well. And morning sickness, for me particularly, I remember with both of our boys, it was just a horrible, like down and out type of situation.
Yeah.
And why morning sickness?
Yeah. So I think this obviously, I think we find alignment in the past that we've already walked. And for me, that was sort of the experience. I had a pregnancy before my son and I ended up miscarrying, but I had morning sickness then. And when I ended up getting pregnant with my son, it was just like amplified, really.
Mm,
And so I think the challenging part is that there's those 12 weeks where there's no provider really kind of that you're connecting with, and you don't really know what is quote unquote normal. And
mm,
so you're suffering in silence. You're probably gaslighting yourself a little bit because you're like, oh, this is harder than I thought. And then you're like, but everyone else seems to have done it. And we don't really share enough about that. Those early weeks, especially, we kind of like go inward and hibernate. And I think there's a lot that's left off the table that's not normalized that we could be talking about. So there's a piece in that. And then for me, obviously, I ended up having a diagnosis of hyperemesis gravidarum. I was sick 20, 30 times a day sometimes, needing IVs in the hospital, needing medication. And
wow.
my educational background kind of afforded me this like opportunity to figure it out. Having been a physiotherapist and a holistic health coach and taken nutrition and genetics and all these different things. And there was just this moment where I was in the hospital, I got medication, it worked for me, and my brain said, what is this medication doing? Can you just like reverse engineer this? Right. And
Hmm.
at this point, I was maybe 24 or 25 weeks pregnant. And so I had sort of this like aha moment. I also came across like this one comment on Instagram from a holistic doctor that I follow, and it was just like the spark for the fire. So I ended
Mm,
up kind of figuring it out. Again, I was able to because of my background, and I put a plan in place. I implemented the plan and I threw up once on day 3, and I was never sick again. I went on to feeling like the best I felt probably in 10 years in that 3rd trimester. And just realizing after hearing other women's stories that everybody is kind of just, they slip through the cracks. There's no cause, no solution. There's only just like this approach of throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks in terms of like harsh medications that we haven't tested on the
hmm.
baby. And I think, why it felt like an aligned piece for me is stepping back. As part of my physiotherapy degree, we always had to work in hospital. And I did my physiotherapy master's in the UK. And we always had to work in hospital, and we had to give a project that was like a service improvement. So we had to basically tell the people that we worked for how they could make the service better for their patients. And every single time I'd have that meeting, here's an idea, here's what you can do. And it was met with like, who are you to say this to us? Thanks, but no thanks. We'll be doing none of that. And I just
Wow.
realized like the systems don't have the capacity or time to change. And I kept thinking like, I'm going to create my own job and my own role, and I'm going to like save the system, and, kind of getting shot down and shot down and shot down. I just realized like, no, I'm really not. And now I'm just like this unconventional approach of like leaving clinical practice, not even doing exactly physiotherapy, and helping women understand the connections between like, why are you sick? Like, this is your body actually protecting you and the baby, or doing its best job to do that. And if we just ask why, the answer will like show up, and I can help you find that answer. And I think that now it's just become sort of like a grassroots movement for me. Like, if I'm going to change the systems, I'm going to do it from like conception.
That is so incredible. Honestly, I think like there are so many stories of holistic healing that I have personally heard over my years in entrepreneurship, and just felt so inspired by these folks who were like, traditional medicine wasn't working for me. It's not working for my child. And I want to make sure that I can find a way to make this work for me. And it's just blossomed into this super incredible thing. So I appreciate you for like going outside of the norm and not just like surrendering to whatever systems were in the hospital and like whatever was happening. But I wonder, like, I remember being really, I don't know, scared when I was a first time mom. Like, I was just like, I don't know. I'm trusting these doctors. I love that you brought up like what is normal, right? In that very first trimester, because I
Yeah.
remember asking my provider the same thing. And they basically came back with like, everything is normal. Like, women just experience such a variety of symptoms during this time that we really can't tell you what is normal or not for your body, since this is the first time you've gone through this. And I felt super alone. So, what led to like your confidence being able to kind of break against the grain? Because I imagine that you were met with some challenges there, being like, well, I'm not going to trust the experts. I'm going to go do this thing on my own.
Yeah, I think, it started again, like backtrack. I am in my master's degree. I have to have all the checks and balances in terms of like working in the hospital. So I end up having a vaccine injury at that time, going into like my placement as an adult, which brought back a lot of like my traumatic brain injury symptoms that I had from being an athlete. I was a wrestler in university and high school and stuff like
Oh,
that. So
wow.
it was kind of just like that coming back. And then that spiraled sort of into autoimmune disease. And I was going to the doctor, had just finished my master's. I'd moved back to Canada. I was like feeling like vacuuming my floor was exhausting. Like, it was all
Mm,
I had in me. And I'm like, okay, I'm fit. I'm healthy. I eat well. I've been an athlete at a high level most of my life. Like, this doesn't seem to fit. And I kept going to the
hmm
doctors, and I'm like, hey, here's all the pieces of information I have. What do you think about that? And I just kept getting met with, we don't know. I would start having like these autoimmune flare ups. Some of the times, like, they would run me through infectious disease protocols, check if I had mumps, check if I had mono, like all these different things of like, why is
mm,
your body sort of shutting down? And I probably went through at least a dozen specialists, like cancer doctors, rheumatoid doctors, ear, nose, and throat, sleep studies, like everything. And they all kept coming back with like, hey, these are the things that are abnormal, but we don't know why. And like, just maybe come back in a year and you'll probably be like bad enough that we can diagnose you. So
Oh,
like my
wow. What a
lifestyle was
promise.
really like propping me up to like not fall fully down the hole. So I guess I just had this like period of like disenfranchisement a little bit. Like, that happened a few times. I went to the doctors again when I was like wrestling as a university. This was even before then. And I went 3 times in a week to the hospital, and I said, something's not right with my body. And they kept saying, well, did you take Advil and Tylenol? And I said, that's not that. No, did you do this? No, it's not that. Well, just go to physiotherapy. And then finally I went to a different doctor, and he's like, your appendix is rupturing, or like something is seriously happening. And I went to the hospital, still waited and like with a doctor's note for like 5 hours for them to see me. They did a CAT scan, and they're like, your entire insides are like blown up. Right now, they had to take out 8 inches of my intestine because it had all just like, they said it was probably 4 days prior my appendix had ruptured. Unfortunately, I didn't die. So it's just all these little
Oh my
experiences where I really didn't get
gosh.
like contained by the medical system. So I remember sitting in the doctor's office and saying like, I'm so sick. It's all the time. It's something I'm doing on a daily basis. Like, what do you think about nutrition? And they looked at me and they said, you know way more about nutrition than we do. We don't consider that part of medicine. I think that was just like a clicking moment for me.
Mhm.
So I kind of like healed myself through the autoimmune thing. Later, I was like, if I did it once, I can do it again. Right. And now I think I just have that in me of like, again, I've been now studying the body for 15 years. I've got a master's in anatomy. And it was just like, how do I connect all the dots? And that's what's really led me to feel confident in this is like, I know that so many even well-meaning like practitioners are trained in silos of information and they never talk to each other, they never communicate. And because I've just spent like really the last almost 8 years connecting those dots, I know that I have something to offer that a lot of people need and that a lot of practitioners can't offer. So I guess like, yeah, my confidence has really come from that. I do get the, you're not a doctor, like you're a quack, you're spewing this and blah, blah, blah all the
Mm.
time. But like my clients, like as much as there's that, there's my clients being like, you've literally changed my life.
That's so powerful, honestly. I want to just stop and say that that is incredible that you've kind of carved out that path outside of traditional medicine and that you've done it in service of the folks who feel like they can't kind of fit inside of that traditional model. Talk to me about your approach to morning sickness. I think, like, for moms listening who are like, oh gosh, I'm deep in this, like, what are some of the things that you look for? What are the most common things that moms can do to kind of alleviate this pressure on their business, their life, their well being? I mean, geez, when I was morning sick with my kids, it definitely wasn't as bad as what you described, Jess, but I was like laid in bed like most of the day. All I could eat
Yeah.
was like salt bagels and like peanut butter and jelly. It was wild.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the first thing is accepting that that's not normal. And I know that it's sad that like your practitioner did say that's normal
Yeah,
because they are seeing like I always say this with people's blood work. They're like, "Well, my blood work's normal." I'm like, "Okay, but you're comparing an 18 to a 75-year-old American as
that's
the
right.
scope of normal, right? So yeah, you fit in that
Yes.
box somewhere in there. You're in, right? So I think first of all, we have to trust the little voice in ourselves that says like, "Is this normal?" Because I don't know that it is. And then really lean into what feels true for us. I think my approach to it is that really I'm working a lot with women who have hyperemesis gravidarum. But a lot of women don't even know that that term exists or that's the diagnosis for it.
Yeah, I
And I
had
don't
no
like to
idea.
say diagnosis because it's not a disease, it's a symptom of your body being imbalanced. And we just have to
Hmm.
figure out what we have to balance. And then you'll go back into a state of ease, out of the
Hmm.
dis-ease into the ease, right? So I think, for me, it's really been like my journey has been like, what are all the ways that this could show up? What are all the systems in the body that can lead to this? And
Hmm.
everybody comes on, they're like, hey, tell me what the supplement was that you took. And I'm like, well, the thing I took for me was addressing the root cause for me. But you have a different cocktail of things going on, your
Right.
liver health is in a different state, your gut health is in a different state. The emotional baggage that you've been carrying through or how you process it is different. So it's my approach to that is kind of I have these like 8 pillars that I'm addressing. And it's sort of like how much of each of these are impacting you. And then let's hit it from multiple angles. So the liver is something really easy for me to talk about. If the liver is not functioning as well as it could be, well, the liver helps regulate blood sugar. It helps digest your food. It helps like clear pathogens out of your digestive system. And it also helps contain emotions around anger and irritability and mom rage and all these different things. And
Mm.
so it's like, how can we hit it from like an emotional standpoint and like provide healing in that context, provide it in a physical standpoint, provide it nutritionally. And so I kind of do that across the 8 categories. And for me, it's just like I tell it like, here's your day. Here's what you're doing at 8, 10, noon, whatever, right? And it's not as big as it feels. But when we have all those touch points on healing all those different systems, it gets the women results so quickly. And so I really
Mm.
lump it in the category of like HG or severe morning sickness. Think of it like autoimmune disease or like cancer, where it is actually a combination of factors contributing to it. And if you're willing to get curious, I'm willing to share what I know. And that's sort of where we go
Mm.
from there.
Man, I love that. I love the uniqueness in which you approach this. I love the specificity for each of the moms because I agree with you. I think we're all just so unique, and like using blanket statements of health on a group of people is just really, really challenging, right? And it also ultimately ends up doing somebody a disservice, right, along the way.
Yeah,
So I think this is super awesome. Could you imagine a position where this could also support moms postpartum with hormones and all the feelings and all the things, or no?
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
all I joke that like the people working with me, their husbands could come in and get healthier, right? Because
I love
then
it.
again, the HG or the morning sickness is a symptom of these things
That's
not
right.
being in alignment.
Sure.
It's a symptom of nutritional deficiencies, toxicities, or imbalances in systems. And so anybody at any phase really will optimize their health. Like I tell women, like, yeah, you're coming to me for this, but really this is my deeper mission, my selfish mission underneath that is to help the trajectory of your unborn child right now, because we don't realize
Mhm.
that asthma, cavities, like the need for braces, behavioral, cognition, like all of these are stemming from the fact that we're building a baby in a nutrient deficient state. And it's maybe
Mm.
not showing up to 10 years later. And then we go like, there's no cause or there's no reason for that. It's like, no, our body is struggling and we're failing to learn the language of our body and we've never been taught it. And if we did, then we would be able to start like tapping into and providing the things that our body needs. So, what I am teaching, or like, I'm not healing anybody. I'm like helping them come to the answers that they already probably know deep within themselves. And I'm helping them connect the dots for themselves. And that can provide healing in any phase of life. So, absolutely, postpartum, for pregnancy, again, your husband literally could get better with my morning sickness program because it's about understanding what your body is asking for and the ways it asks for it and just tuning
Mm.
in and listening to it.
Well, specifically for moms, right? Like that path, like your body transforms and it's super different. So talk to me about like the stages or the seasons of things that your body may need in certain circumstances. So like when you're pregnant and building a baby and when you're postpartum, those are actually two very different timelines or two very different bodily needs, right? Because you've got building the baby and you've got like breastfeeding and recovery and all the differences with regulating your hormone imbalances and whatnot from having baby. And then like I'm like almost 3 years postpartum and I'm like really just starting to recently feel like, okay, emotionally I feel a little bit more stable. I feel like I have like a control over some of my feelings and my energy levels and those types of things. So like for moms particularly, what are the differences in the different stages? I mean, should we constantly be reassessing this? Like once a month, once a quarter? What's like the typical timeline?
Yeah, I think honestly, like you would be doing yourself a service to once a month kind of like do a check in on your own health, your own energy systems, like whatever. In my course and in my offerings, I actually teach people how to muscle test themselves so that they can start
Mm.
communicating with their body. And I think it's just a skill that will translate into any aspect of their life. So when we are pregnant, we're really in a giving state, right? Like our baby is pulling from nutrient stores all in our system. And then we don't even necessarily recognize or appreciate that. So, where and when certain things like this is why, again, some women have more of an experience of morning sickness because the burden that's put on those organ systems has just like jumped or like tenfolded, right? And
Sure.
when those were just barely hanging on when you were just functioning on your own, now you're demanding so much more of them. Then we move into postpartum. And again, I think really like the theme across all of it is that mothers just give. We just give and give and give. And we've never been taught or educated on like what do we need actually to renourish and to like fill our cup. So we get postpartum, we start having cavities, our hair falls out. We're just told it's hormonal, right? It's like, no, your body has literally given away everything. And it's to the point of like pulling those minerals back out of your teeth or out of your bones
Mhm.
or saying like, none of this is going to hair because hair is not important for survival, right? And so I think like again postpartum we're really doing women a disservice to not teach them how to like refuel, replenish, renourish their body. And then we see the challenges of postpartum depression and anxiety and mood swings and like all of these things. I know it sounds wild, but all of these things are the symptoms of your nutrient deficiencies. Like
Mm.
I occasionally toxicities, but it is toxicities and organ systems not being able to keep up. But if we flooded that with nutrients, it would still get a lot better. So really, it's like we've been probably nutrient dense or nutrient void for a long time. We go into pregnancy, it's entirely nutrient demanding. We go into postpartum and we like have the crash of our hormones. We're trying to balance things out. We don't have the fuel and the resources even to stabilize like stress hormones, sex hormones, feel good, happy hormones, right? I always tell women like there's kind of a hierarchy of like if you only have limited resources, first they're going to stress hormones because stress
Totally.
hormones are going to keep you alive, right?
Yep.
They are what like make you run from danger, so they're priority. Next, if all of that's taken care of, then maybe there's some for sex hormones and like which ones get it kind of thing, and thyroid. And then lastly is going to be your like feel good, happy hormones. Like it is not part of your survival to feel joyful every day in life. That is not going
Mm.
to be part of it. So your body's going to prioritize that last when your nutrients and your gut health and things are not there. So I think like recognizing that all of these states have a root cause underneath that you actually can control and you can contribute to and you can improve upon once you know this information.
Man, I'm feeling so inspired. And also, like, you've created the rubric that helps people like take control of their own health, especially moms when things feel just so chaotic and so different. And I remember like so many women who've come through our programs, and I remember feeling this way is they're just like, oh, I don't like have control over my body, or like I'm totally outside of myself, or I don't feel like myself. And I love that you've kind of brought these tools to them. I want to ask genesis of a skincare line. So I've had moms on the show who have done product based businesses in the past, and I'm like really excited about the inspiration of that. So you said you wanted to really take control of what you're putting on your body and, you know, what was basically going to your baby, right? Like while you were pregnant. But what really started the idea of wanting to create your own skincare products?
Yeah, I think I was so my brand is called Aura Apothecary and it's like a tallow-based skincare line.
Oh,
And it is I found this tallow out of the US that's importing it to Canada. She sold out in like seconds and I was like always trying to get a jar and then it was like $200 by the time it got to me, right? And I'm like, oh, honestly, my middle name should have been DIY just in like general. So I thought like, oh, yeah, I can do this, right? And maybe I can bring it here and like maybe I could have like that version of something here. And so when I started like to sit and think about it, I'm like, well, she uses essential oils. And if say I have like a little bit of like a cut or like my skin's broken, when I put it on, it burns in that spot. I know it heals so good and it actually helps, but
mm,
I'm like, maybe I've changed that, right? And I started like thinking about how I would do it. And then I just sort of started to do it and I made it for myself and I kind of like batch. And then I was like, okay, I'm like postpartum, a few months. I'm going to like, again, it was a friend had wanted to start this like eco store a few years previous. And we wanted the theme to be like everything that was in the store you could trust. So you didn't have to
mm,
stress as a mom or like as a woman coming in and being like, oh, I gotta choose the best product. It was like everything in here has been vetted and you can just choose what feels nice for you. And so I
mhm.
went through the process back then of like vetting all these companies and listening to their origin stories and asking them where they source stuff. And so that was kind of like woven in and got to be like a really exciting way for me to use like my creativity in these products. So I like found a farm. I didn't want to, I kind of like sometimes I kick my butt because when I have to make like big like restocks, I'm like, okay, and why did I infuse organic herbs for 6 weeks before I could even make this when other people just go drop, drop, drop with essential oils? But it gave me a product I feel so proud about. I like had zero, like I put it on my son for everything, like, and it just became so multi-purpose and so healing because again, I'm using fat, which is like I can go off on a tangent about how we don't really absorb. We all know we're kind of vitamin D deficient, right? Our systems
Yeah.
aren't absorbing fats all that well. And so like here it was like a topical like healing gift that I was giving to at the time myself, also my little one. And then I just started giving it out. I really like did position like one of my products as like the best thing you could give a new mom in their baby shower gift sort of thing because she doesn't
Nice.
know that she's going to use it for diaper rash and cradle cap and a nipple balm and like everything.
Everything.
And she doesn't have to stress about it. Like now that your kid's like nursing there, you didn't have to like literally it's organic jojoba oil, beef fat, and chamomile flowers. Like there's nothing like bad about it.
Crazy
And
in
I've
there.
made it
Yeah,
myself with
totally.
my own hands. So I know that I haven't even like, I don't know, put plastic spoons into it, you know? So yeah, that's sort of like, and it's just evolved and grown and just one other hat that I wear.
My gosh, that's amazing. We're big tallow fans at our house, like
Yeah,
big time. We cook with it. I always say, like, we just put it on everything. Like, if
literally.
you've ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, you know how they always like spray Windex all over stuff? That's like us with tallow. Like, we love it so much. Also, shout out in second for us, and we found this super early on, is just like raw, unrefined shea butter.
Yeah,
It's like really tough to use sometimes. You like really got to work it. But my son Jack and Frank both had like their dad is Irish and they have like super fair skin. And it was really challenging for us in the beginning with like their dry skin. And it just like the tallow and the shea butter just like totally completely changed our lives. And we honestly have not had an issue with dry skin. And we put it on them every single day.
yeah, I know. It is my son. My son goes, like, comes home from his little nursery and he's like, Mommy, I got a bug bite. I need tallow. Mommy, I scraped this. I need tallow. Like, just everything. Like, before he goes to school, he's like, Can you put tallow on me?
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, so we are the
That is
exact
so
same.
sweet.
It is like, yeah, it goes on anything and everything, and it usually does a good job. I actually like have my hair slicked back with a like a tallow stick that I made for hair. So it is. I'm drenched in tallow right now. So
I love it. Honestly, yeah, I put it on my face. I wear Primally Pure. Like they have a really
yeah,
nice like line of tallow products that I really like because it's like lighter for my skin, the regular tallow. I'm like, I have very oily skin. But yeah, tallow has changed our life over here and just in general, just beef fat in general. Like
yeah,
there's tons of things. And something I just learned recently is creatine for like brain function specifically is like super incredible for moms.
it's like one of the best things for moms to do.
But, like, it's apparently when you're, like, sleep deprived, it's, like, the perfect thing to continue brain function even though you haven't had a full night's sleep. Like, I did not know this when my kids were newborns. I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an amazing supplement, and it's something that again we kind of like think about for like men and muscles and this and that.
Bodybuilding, totally.
And I had another mom, like, so my little guy goes to like a naturopathic pediatrician, and his wife is also really in the space of like geeks out hard on like the science of everything. And so I remember just talking to them, and her and I sound so similar. And like, I went to him after, I'm like, I'm so fatigued. I don't
Mm,
know. And it was like, you're full blown Hashimoto's, which is exactly what you probably had before. You're so healthy that
mm.
it's like masked, but women don't realize that this is so common postpartum because, again, we don't have those building blocks for all the hormones that we're needing. And she was like, creatine, number one, like you have to do creatine sort of thing. And yeah, it does just like connect. And it's so interesting because like it's probably the most studied supplement and the least side affected like supplement that you can really get probably on the market that isn't like food. So yeah, and I think it goes beyond, like you said, beef fat, but I think it goes like fats. Like we have been told in like growing up through the 90s that fat is
Yeah.
bad and like whatever,
Mhm.
right? And we like, I even had this epiphany one day. I'm like, why am I draining the fat off my like my ground beef? Like I guess it was just something that I've thought this whole time. And I'm like,
Forever. Yeah.
it's those, I need those nutrients. Like my body needs those calories, those nutrients. As a mom right now, like what am I doing? Right.
Mhm.
So I think it's just again, we're changing the paradigm of normal, but it's in small and unconventional ways.
How do you just I know I'm guilty of this. How do you keep some time for your own health, your own self-care, your motherhood? I mean, you clearly are leaving it all out on the field for moms and like people going through this process. Like it's so clear how passionate you are. It's so clear how much you care. I can imagine that your clients feel super supported. What kind of systems do you have in place or how do you stay on top of making sure that you are also a priority in your own health?
Yeah, I think this is something that I have probably not traditionally been good at. And I think even the times and ways, like I always say that like HG or severe morning sickness is like a forced surrender, right? So I think even with my autoimmune disease, I've had these like forced surrenders in my life that now I'm getting better at saying like, oh, I actually need that before I get to that point. And so I guess it's like fool me once, fool me twice sort of thing. And now I recognize that my health needs it. And so it's hard because I want to wear all hats and I have like energy and things to like share and give. And yeah, passionate is a word I would say definitely fits. But I'm just carving out time and I'm really trying to hold grace for myself where I'm not feeling guilty for it. So I think part of it is like, Wednesday mornings typically, and then Fridays all day, I'm not taking clients, I'm not doing anything. And the time where my little guy's in his like Waldorf nursery, I like now being in Mexico, I go to the beach and I just sit there and I do nothing and I give myself permission to do nothing. And
Mm,
yeah, I think, like writing that own permission slip for myself and just reminding myself that it's not something to have guilt around has been, I don't know, the reminder I've needed in this season of life where I want to be
mm,
doing all things and I'll stretch super thin. So,
mhm.
yeah, I think just carving that out, like put literally in my calendar, it's blocked. Like no one can book calls in that time. And I just take it.
That's fantastic. I think reminding ourselves that there are seasons, right, of life and business, and some of those seasons require moving a little bit slower and just rest in general, I think is a very undervalued aspect of high performance and success and all of that stuff, right? You see a lot of the go, go, go. You don't see a lot of the, okay, let's slow down for a second and rebuild our nervous system and our muscular tissue and all that stuff, right? Everybody's like taking photos of the workouts and all the stuff, right, that you
Yeah.
do to like break things.
Yeah.
It's super interesting, I think, that you've set that time aside. I do want to talk about the guilt
Yeah.
because that's a thing, right? I think like if I were to be in a position, like I just went to Phoenix, I was speaking at an industry event and I love Scottsdale, like one of my favorite places on earth. It's so serene to me. I love their commitment to spa. Like it's just wonderful. And I have particularly a favorite resort. And I was thinking as I was planning this event, I was like, oh, maybe I'll go for an extra day and I'll just like go to the spa. And like immediately I was flooded with like, oh, I'm leaving Steve, my husband, home with the two kids alone. And I've already been gone for 2 days. Why would I do another day or whatever else? And so I talked myself completely out of it. And then when I was leaving and I came back, I was so tired. I was just like, oh, so I ended up like laying around all day Thursday with the kids, which ended up being really great. But
Yeah.
like, why does that guilt come in? And how can we, or how have you kind of talked yourself into doing the restful things and talked yourself into self care?
Yeah, I just kind of like, I guess I talk myself into it because I know what happens if I don't, right? If I cram my schedule full, I know my kid's getting like the leftover version of me and not the like full version of me. Like, I saw these like sometimes quotes speak to you and stuff, right? And it was like, you don't be the parent that gives your kids like the worst or what's left over of you sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that if that deeply did feel true to me. And I do like, I have these two competing roles where like I've never felt more in my purpose as a mother and I want to be connected and do the best job. And then also like I can't really sit still in that. Like again, postpartum, I'm creating a skincare line, like as if I had nothing better to be doing or wasn't exhausted. So I think I know where it ends up, like because I've had the I would say disfortune of getting sick, but actually really it's been like the pivot points for me and that's like changed my path to where I am now. So I'm grateful for it. But I know where it goes and I know who suffers in that. So I think it's easy to say like I didn't want to take the extra day at the spa because it felt selfish, but if we spun that around and it's like I came back refreshed and got to give my family the best version of myself for the entire week following, like that's actually the least guilty or selfish thing you could be doing, right? So I think, yeah, we just need to have conversations and hold spaces both within ourselves and with other women where it's like, you don't have to give everything you have in order to be good. Like
Yeah.
you need you need to be the best of yourself and then everyone else will benefit from that. So yeah.
That's such an incredible perspective. And I think more moms need to hear that like really often and in different types of ways, because I think we are wired to give, where I really do believe that, especially moms who are in like service or health or any of those types of things, right? Where it's a client, it's a, a deep relationship where you're like helping somebody through a tough time. I think it's really easy to put somebody else first rather than put ourselves first. And it feels really comfortable for us to do that until it's not.
Yeah.
So I really super appreciate you sharing this. And honestly, just everything that you're doing for moms, for families, and giving them that autonomy back over their health, over their decisions, over the way that they spend their time and how they really prioritize themselves if moms are listening and they're like, I got to get me some more of Jess and they want to learn some more about your programs, honestly, I know I'm going to go maybe on a deep dive of what you're offering because I'm like, I'm probably overdue for a little nervous system and like holistic health check. But where can folks follow along with what you're doing and get some more information on your services?
Yeah, I think my like center point of it all is on Instagram. My Instagram account is the_wellness_element. And everything kind of jumps off from that. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. It's just not where I want to pour my energy. So there's not a whole lot on there. But really, I have my website, thewellnesselement.ca, but most of it is just stemming from Instagram, and then everything is sort of linked off there. There's different, I do have a podcast, very infantile, that I have abandoned and need to pick back up. And while my Instagram is really like speaking to the morning sickness piece, I think my podcast has been a long form, like health education platform. And that's really what I want it to serve as, is like, these are all the things that you're going to be like, oh my God, if I had known these the whole time. So that's the platform that I need to carve out time for as well, because that's super passionate for me. And it's hard to like educate in the 5 seconds that someone has on their attention span on Instagram, or however the
Totally.
algorithm wants you to operate, right? So I think those are kind of the main hubs for me. And again, while I'm spinning it in the context of morning sickness, severe morning sickness, and hyperemesis, the things that I'm teaching underneath are foundational for our health in general. So if you look past that, I think there's a lot of value to kind of soak in that.
That's so amazing. I'm going to link all that stuff in the show notes for moms listening so that they can kind of move around and follow you along or follow along with you. What final word will you leave moms with who are in the thick of growing businesses and raising families? What can you encourage them with?
Yeah, I think it is carve out time for you. You're wearing so many hats and you're doing so many things, and all of these require you to be doing. And I think that the lesson or the takeaway is like, when can you just be, and what feels good in just being, right? And carving out a little space in your week that you get that. And knowing, like, again, we give so much because we want to pour our love into those that we are around us. But what we're also doing is we're modeling not giving ourselves the same love and time and compassion. And if we want our little ones to see that and to model that later in their adult years and not, go outside of themselves for everything, like we do need to model it. And so if it makes you feel less guilty to really say, like, this is what modeling self-love looks like for me, then take that spin on it, because we deserve it and we do so much and we wear so many hats, and you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So just a reminder, a permission slip. I don't know what's needed, but take from it what you will.
I love that. I love that reframe on like modeling behavior. I think that's super important as our kids grow to be able to like trust themselves, honor themselves, speak nicely to themselves, prioritize themselves. That is such incredible wisdom. Jess, this was delightful. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and for sharing this conversation.